In this video we're going to introduce the topic of succession, and then we're going to have a general overview of why Augustus needed a successor and what he needed to take into account. So the key questions to take notes on are: number 1, why did Augustus need a successor? Number 2, what could he leave to his successor? 3, how did succession need to be managed? Number 4, what problems did he face? And number 5, what role did his wives play in his life? So firstly, why is succession important? The Roman family is the basis of Roman society, and Julius Caesar had inherited his prestige and power through his family connection to Julius Caesar, so he wanted to pass this power on. The idea of succession becomes important to him at regular intervals during his rule. So he had secured the boundaries and the constitution of Rome. He had restored virtues and morals and brought about the Pax Romana, or the peace of Rome, but he needed to make sure that this continued. Augustus had a great legacy to leave to a successor. There were lots of different things he could leave. So he could leave his property, including his slaves, to anyone he wished, and this also included his many ex-slaves or freedmen and his clients. The heir would have the responsibility, just like he had done for Julius Caesar, of distributing the legacies left to the people of Rome and the soldiers in both Italy and the provinces. And whoever received this legacy would have the support of most of the empire's administrative staff, which would make it almost impossible for anyone else to govern. In addition, his power and his positions, as we've seen, are personal rather than dynastic. They weren't the sorts of things that he could hand down. So therefore he couldn't leave his proconsular imperium maius, his tribunicia potestas, or his honours or titles to his heir. He couldn't put them in his will. However, he could persuade the Senate to vote similar powers to him. And the challenge for Augustus was to make sure that his successor was clearly recognised by the people, while still appearing to have restored the republic rather than creating a monarchy. So his heir needed sufficient legal powers to control the government, and without an heir or a smooth transition, it would be quite easy for all the work that he had done to be undone. As we'll see, Augustus's designs for succession were plagued by many issues throughout his career. So political liaisons, so forming alliances and marriages, were limiting. He was also unable to have his own biological son. The successors he adopted kept on dying, as we'll see. His biological daughter and granddaughter were very naughty and got up to all kinds of trouble, as we'll see. And another problem, he had to find a way to pass on the honours which had been bestowed on him, as they weren't hereditary. He needed to find a way for those people to get those powers in their own right. We'll just go off onto a sort of side tangent now and look at Augustus's different wives. So he had 3 important wives in his life. So the first one was Claudia Pulchra, who was the stepdaughter of Mark Antony. They were married in 40 BC and then divorced, so Octavian chose to kind of discontinue that connection. He then married Scribonia, who was the granddaughter of Pompey Magnus, or Pompey the Great. And they married in 39 BC, and she was the mother of Julia the Elder, who was Augustus's only biological child, and he divorced her the day following her labour in order to marry his third wife, Livia Drusilla. They were married in 38 BC, so right after Scribonia had been divorced, and she died in 29 AD. So a bit more on Livia. She was personally introduced to Octavian in 39 BC. They are said to have fallen in love and got married later that year. At the time, she already had a son called Tiberius, and she was pregnant with her second son, whose name is Drusus. So he's said to have fallen in love with her immediately, despite the fact that they were both married, and she was pregnant and his wife was pregnant. So they remained married for the next 51 years, despite the fact that they had no children. They had one miscarriage, and that was it. But he still stayed married to her, even though she couldn't provide him with a biological child. And she had a really dominant position in Rome. Okay, she always enjoyed the status of being a privileged counselor or advisor to her husband. She petitioned him on the behalf of others, influenced his policies. So it was quite an unusual role for a Roman wife in a culture where the pater familias was dominant. And it was also said that she was so ruthless in her ambitions for her son Tiberius that she removed, and by removed we mean killed, perhaps poisoned, several potential successors. Okay, so just check you've got the answers to these questions. Number 1, why did Augustus need a successor? Number 2, what could he leave to him? Number 3, how did he need to manage or ensure succession? Number 4, what problems did he face? And number 5, what role did his wives play in his life? If you've got any questions, note them down and we'll discuss them in class.